picture-perfect family with a dirty secret.
His clientele were very, very wealthy, people with lots of money.
She knew too much. She was a liability.
A twisted plot suddenly laid bare.
Whoever did this knew what they were doing.
And an investigation no one would ever forget.
He was using me. I was just a pawn in his game.
We just thought for sure that nothing could get more strange than this case.
A Texas-sized tale of gambling, greed, and double-crossing. Tonight, on Power, Privilege, and Justice.
Houston, Texas, April 16th, 1997. Shortly after 9 p.m., Bob Angleton and his daughters rush home from a softball game. Bob's worried about his wife, Doris.
He sent his wife home to go get this special baseball bat that his daughter used when she was at the plate.
Doris had not come back to the ball game, and that he didn't know where she was, and there was a concern as to her safety.
Doris was a devoted mother, and it was unlike her to miss any social activity.
She had a certain joie de vivre, a certain life, energy, carefree. She loved life. She loved living. She loved people.
The family pulls up to an ominous scene at their River Oaks home. Doris's car is in the driveway, and the door to the house is open, but she's not answering the phone. The girls panic and cling to their father.
They were afraid that there might be a burglar or something wrong inside the house, and they didn't want him to go inside the house in case he might be hurt.
So instead of going inside, Bob backs out of sight and calls for help.
Houston Police, this is Moore.
Yes, hi. I'm at my residence. Back door is ajar. My wife, to my best knowledge, was home. I'm getting no answer in the car, in the house. I have children with me in the car. What do I do?
Okay, just hold on. What's your last name?
Angleton, Angleton. My children are sitting here telling me they don't want me to go in the house.
They don't? Let me get somebody out there, Mr. Angleton. I'll get someone out there.
Please.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Minutes later, Officer Kevin Carr arrives.
He's telling me, you know, you got to go in there. There's something wrong. I've tried her on the cell phone. I've tried her on the pager. Her car's in the driveway and the door's ajar. You got to get in the house.
Carr proceeds down a back hallway.
There were 4 steps that led up to a hallway that connected into the kitchen. As I stepped up off that top step, I kicked the shell casing, and I heard it skip across the floor. Drew my attention down, and then I saw her there laying on the floor.
She appears to have been shot numerous times in the head and chest.
I reached down, checked for vitals. There were none.
The husband and kids are outside praying for a happy ending. But inside the house, it's pure tragedy. For even a seasoned cop, finding Doris Angleton like that had to be rough.
Helter-skelter. It was a bloodbath.
I told Mr. Angleton that, you know, we'd found his wife. And he's like, how is she? How is she? And I said, you know, she's passed. She is dead. He just ran away from me and started running across the front yard with his hands up over his head, just yelling and wailing.
At first, detectives assume it's a robbery gone wrong. But things aren't adding up. There are no signs of forced entry. The alarm system is turned off. Nothing seems disturbed.
There were no drawers pulled out. Nothing was gone through. There was a safe upstairs. The safe wasn't messed with. There were still some bearer bonds in the safe.
Detectives believe Doris was shot soon after entering the house.
She was either caught coming in or just leaving because she was right in the entryway.
We felt like that she did come in through the front door. She placed a purse down to the right of the front door, went by Bob's study into the kitchen, and that's where she was shot.
Investigators analyzed the bullet wounds and pieced together a likely scenario.
It looked like Doris was knocked down after the first 1 or 2 shots and stayed on the ground, and then it looked like the last several shots were directly to her head.
Police collect 13 .22 caliber casings.
I felt like it was overkill. They shoot till they run out of bullets just to make sure that the person is dead.
Tracing the bullet's trajectory, they realized that there had to be 2 guns, but just 1 shooter.
From the angles of the bullets, unless there's 1 shooter, you'd be having shooters shooting at each other with the person in the middle.
But even if a suspect emerges, ballistics won't be able to make a match.
The bullets that were used to shoot Doris are explosive bullets. The bullets have all shattered. There's no striations or anything that can be matched.
Crime scene investigators scour the property for fingerprints, footprints, or trace evidence the killer might have left behind. But their search comes up empty. Whoever killed Doris Angleton seems to have made a clean getaway. Detectives question Bob about the hours leading up to Doris's death.
I left the house, headed for, we have a game scheduled at 7:45. I got to the field, we're doing some batting practice. My wife pulls up, gets out, says she's coming back home to change and she'll be back for the game.
Bob asked her to bring back the girl's lucky baseball bat, which they left in the backyard. But Doris never came back.
We're playing out there, and then she hasn't returned. She's not in the stand, so I called. I didn't get a response, and got the machine, and then I got concerned.
Detectives ask Bob if he can think of anyone who had it in for Doris.
Had a lot of thoughts going through my mind in the last 30 minutes. I got a few ideas.
Okay.
Then he makes a shocking admission.
He asked, can you turn off tape recorder? He told me that he was a bookie.
And not just any bookie. Bob Angleton runs one of the largest sports books in Texas.
He was handling between 40 and 60 million a year in action, taking a percentage of that.
Bob was able to be so successful at this, mostly because his clientele were very, very wealthy oil people and doctors and lawyers and people with lots of money who made large bets.
Everybody rationalized it, saying nobody was getting hurt. If it was legal in Las Vegas, you know, why wasn't it legal in Texas?
Bookmaking isn't Bob's only vocation. He's been a police informant for the last 10 years.
He was the key informant for the Houston Police Department's Vice Squad that was supposed to enforce the laws against betting.
He was snitching on other bookies.
We were all thinking the killing of Doris had something to do with Bob's bookmaking activities.
I did feel that it was because of Bob's lifestyle. I didn't know who might have been angry enough with Bob to kill her.
Every degenerate gambler in Houston and every two-bit bookie Bob had put out of business was now on the suspect list. But there may have been more trouble lurking closer to home.
In the days after the murder of Doris Angleton, the people of Houston are still reeling.
Everybody was pretty shocked. It's not very often that a wealthy, relatively prominent woman is shot in her own home in a place like that. People were really not sure of what was going on there.
Homicides are not supposed to take place in neighborhoods like River Oaks.
River Oaks is the most affluent place to live in Houston. Jet-setting socialites from all over, that go all over the world.
And a woman like Doris Angleton didn't make for a likely murder victim.
There was nobody that had ever met Doris that wasn't immediately entranced with her grace and her charm and her conviviality.
Doris was a great sister. I would truly say that growing up, it was like Leave It to Beaver. And we were good friends.
Doris's small-town upbringing could not have differed more from Bob's.
His father was a real estate mogul. His father built garden homes all over New Jersey, built high-rises. He was a developer and very successful, multi-millionaire.
When Bob and Doris first met, they were both already married.
Typical of Bob, he went up to this husband and said, if you ever decide to get rid of that beautiful lady, let me know.
Soon after that, both got divorced, and they began dating. In May of 1982, they married and settled in River Oaks.
Doris was very caught up with Bob. He was, you know, a very charming man and out there to succeed and be a successful businessman.
3 years later, Doris gave birth to twin girls. Money never seemed to be a problem for the Angletons. Bob's bookmaking was hauling in an estimated $2 million a year, all in cash.
You know, he was making money with the sports booking, but he had other businesses out there. He had bought some strip malls and some restaurants and had a used car dealership. When they bought the house in Galveston, they formed a corporation to buy that.
Most of the people in Doris's world had no idea how Bob made his millions. When Doris confided to a friend he's a bookmaker, the woman replied, I had no idea he was so literary.
Bob would go to the Briar Club and swim laps, and he'd have a cell phone at either end of the pool, and in between laps, he would take and make bets.
For nearly 10 years, Bob's business thrived, thanks in large part to the Houston PD, who overlooked his criminal activities in exchange for information on all the other bookmakers in town.
Bob would oftentimes lay off bets with other bookies in Houston, and after Bob did that, Bob would rat out the other bookie so that the vice squad could arrest them.
The police department was making arrests of all these other bookmakers and getting their stats up.
For Bob, it was a great way to get rid of the competition and keep his livelihood protected. But there were other troubles in his life.
Doris wants to come out from the shadows. She wants to go legit.
She was really most concerned with the effect her husband's business was having on her girls. She didn't want the girls around it.
Bob was, at that point in time, making apparently a tremendous amount of money with the sports booking aspect of his business. And he was reluctant to yield that.
As the marriage grew strained and her daughters became more independent, Doris began logging on to internet chat rooms for company.
She met a host of online friends, and she became very close with these people.
What started as a harmless diversion led to an affair with a married stockbroker in New Jersey.
Initially, he flew here to meet with her, and then they met several other times in different places across the nation.
I asked her about him. She said, well, it's the first time anybody's made me feel pretty in a long time.
Just 4 weeks before her murder, Doris filed for divorce.
Doris had had enough. She wanted her life back. She was tired of always living on cash.
Bob seemed to respect Doris's decision.
Doris said he was just very quiet. And I asked her if he was angry or anything like that, and she said no.
Under questioning, Bob openly admits there were problems, but says he and Doris were seeing a counselor. He's convinced Doris's murder had nothing to do with her affair. As police turn up the heat, Bob identifies a surprising new suspect, his brother Roger.
Roger Angleton is Bob's older brother, and he's really kind of the opposite of Bob. Bob is very self-contained and very disciplined, very methodical, and Roger is almost the complete opposite. He's really almost a wild man.
Bob described his brother as being very eccentric. They were friends at times, but Roger would all of a sudden, you know, turn on Bob.
Roger had some deep-seated problems. He had several assaults, actually on his brother.
Bob tells police that he initially hired his brother to help with his bookie business, but fired him after just 8 months.
Roger thought he was being mistreated and being taken advantage of, so he demanded a certain amount of money from Bob in order to not go to the police and expose his operation.
It was a large sum of money, and they finally ended up agreeing on a monthly sum till this payment got paid off.
For years after that, the brothers never spoke. Then, several months before Doris's death, Roger broke the silence with another demand.
He said if Bob didn't pay him this $200,000, he was going to come to Houston and do something to Bob that it would make him pay for the rest of his life.
This time, Bob refused.
Bob felt like there was a possibility that Roger was involved in this, that maybe this was Roger's way of getting back at Bob.
Police run a background check on Roger and find a drug possession charge in San Diego, California.
We talked to some investigators out there. We were able to determine that Roger was scheduled to have a court date, and he failed to show for that.
That court date is April 16th, 1997, which is the exact date that Doris is murdered.
If he didn't show up for his court date, where was he? Could Roger maybe have flown out to Houston?
Investigators track Roger's credit card records.
And we found out that he had stayed in several hotels here around Houston around the time period that Doris was shot and killed.
Then detectives learned that Roger had a run-in with security at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, just 5 days after Doris's murder.
The alarm goes off, and the guy looking at the x-ray machine sees there's 2 pistols in there. And they say, well, you can't do that. And Roger says, this is my brother's suitcase. He's out on the curb, I'll go get him.
But Roger never returned.
They start going through the suitcase, and there's all kind of items in the suitcase. There's some wigs in there, hair dye. There's an article from the Houston Chronicle about Doris Angleton being killed here in Houston.
The ammunition found in Roger's luggage is .22 caliber, the same kind of bullets used to kill Doris.
What had appeared to be a cautionary tale about the bookmaking business was, in fact, a troubling family plot. And the deeper cops dug into Roger's motive, the more disturbing the case would become.
Three weeks after Doris Angleton's murder, detectives fly to San Diego looking for their prime suspect, her brother-in-law, Roger Angleton. But the only one home is his wife, Jennifer.
Jennifer told us that she had no idea where Roger was, that she hadn't talked to him in several days or weeks, which we found hard to believe.
Police subpoena the couple's phone records and find several recent calls to a number in Nevada. They dial it, and the Las Vegas City Jail answers the phone.
It kind of took me aback, kind of caught me by surprise. I said, he must be in jail out there.
Investigators discover that 6 days after the murder, Roger checked into a Vegas motel using a fake ID. Suspicious that this new guest could be a criminal, the desk clerk called the police.
Police come to question Roger. They suspect that he's there dealing dope or something like that.
They find out that he is wanted out of San Diego for the failure to appear for that court date. So they arrest him.
One quick search, and they knew something was up.
They find on Roger $64,000 in bills that has been kind of stapled and wrapped together and is hidden in his coat.
Las Vegas police confiscate Roger's belongings, and inside his briefcase they find suspicious items. A cassette tape and a series of typewritten notes.
You got alarm codes on pieces of paper, the gate code on pieces of paper.
Vegas police don't know what to make of the notes, but to Houston detectives, they read like a roadmap to murder.
Talks about the girls' softball game on Wednesday at 7:45, about Doris coming home. Just everything is really keying in on the house, the activities of the girls, the activities of Doris.
But one note stands out above all.
This one's got a different tone to it. This one seems to suggest that Roger has made a deal, a contract with Bob. My deal is to kill and no squealing.
Over a 10-year period, Bob would pay Roger $100,000 over 10 years for the killing. It was a $1 million contract.
Investigators confront Roger.
We're just trying to convince him to tell us what happened. Why did he kill Doris? Did he do it alone? Did Bob hire him to kill Doris? If he did, why? Roger says, I'll tell you everything. There's very many plots to what's going on here. I want to be able to talk to you, but I want to talk to you when I get back to Houston.
Roger seemed to think he had some leverage. But before he uttered a single word, the mini cassette from his briefcase started talking for him.
No, I'm asking you. No, I'm just going over the different. Okay. What is side door? If the side door's locked. Yeah, the reason I'm asking now is you want to give me the key or not?
What detectives hear is Roger and another man apparently plotting a woman's murder.
You're not going to know if you do run the door. You're not going to close all the doors and everything, you know that? No. Just go. You're waiting. She comes in. Right? Yeah. You're here. Right. Then you go around the house. Right.
So he could go in and turn the code off, close the door, rearm it, and then sit there and wait for her. It was a well-planned event.
Though there isn't any proof, detectives are convinced the other voice on the tape is that of Bob Angleton himself. Was the grieving husband actually responsible for his wife's murder?
We were fairly confident after hearing what we did on the tape that Bob had much more to do with this than what he had initially told us.
But why Roger made the tape in the first place remains a mystery. Digging for motive, investigators learned that Bob Angleton had much more to lose in his divorce than anyone knew. Before her murder, Doris had consulted a tax attorney. Seems she wanted to go legit.
And the tax lawyer apparently tells her the only way she can do that is to file an amended return, tax return, with Bob that discloses to the IRS all of this money.
If that happened, Bob would lose everything. He'd maybe go to jail because of all of his bookmaking gambling activities.
So investigators theorize he and Roger hatched a plot. The plan was for Roger to take the blame and then disappear.
Bob knows that the police are never going to be satisfied until they find out who killed Doris. So what is the best plan in the world? To have an airtight alibi and provide them with the killer of Doris, which will then take all the heat off him.
But the plan would only work if Roger managed to disappear. And now detectives have him locked in a jail cell with a tape that's as good as a confession.
The media went crazy because everyone suspected it was Bob. And when the media heard that there was a brother, suspected triggerman, in Las Vegas, it blew it wide open.
Bob had the motive, Roger had the means. It seemed like the jig was up for the Angleton brothers. But then the tide in Texas started to turn.
Investigators in Houston are convinced that Bob Angleton planned the murder of his wife, Doris. But in order to lock him up, they need to flip the alleged hitman, his brother Roger. But the only person Roger will confide in is investigative reporter Vanessa Leggett, and only on the condition that she keep his secrets until after the trial.
Roger's thinking was, if you promise me to withhold this until after my brother's trial, you can print whatever you want and my brother can thumb his nose. What are they going to do to him? He's acquitted.
From his prison cell, Roger discloses the family plot to Leggett.
The plan was that once Roger killed Doris, that Roger would take all the blame for it. Roger felt like he could change his identity and that the police would not be able to put the case together.
According to Roger, he and Bob agreed on a price for the killing, $1 million. But Bob refused to pay it all in a lump sum.
Roger said, why can't you? I mean, I'm not going to partially kill her. And Bob said, I'm going to dole it out to you over term. That's the only way that I'm comfortable with, so I'll give you $100,000 a year.
But Roger didn't trust his brother, so he secretly taped their conversations.
Roger wanted to use that tape as leverage against Bob in case Bob decided to not pay the monies that they had agreed on.
And he knew that he would try to double-cross him any way he could, and so he had that as insurance.
So on the night of the girls' softball game, when Bob would have an airtight alibi, Roger showed up at his brother's house.
He was able to disengage their alarm. He goes inside the house, and just kind of lies in wait for Doris to come home.
Investigators theorize that Bob deliberately left the girl's baseball bat in the backyard so that Doris would walk all the way through the house.
He waited for her to come down that hallway, and as she came down that hallway, he then stepped out and shot her at close range and just assassinated her.
When you marry a bookie, it's for life. You're always the bookie's wife. Doris knew too much. She was a liability.
Bob may have had motive, but prosecutors know that it won't be easy to nail a slippery character like him, especially after he hires Mike Ramsey, one of the toughest defense lawyers in Texas.
Mike Ramsey is one of the best around, and so we knew our work was cut out for us whenever Mike Ramsey became the lawyer.
Mike Ramsey would later make national headlines as the lead defense attorney for Enron CEO Ken Lay. Now the hotshot lawyer was focused on Bob Angleton's freedom, and he wasn't used to losing.
In a pre-trial hearing, the prosecution suffers its first setback. The judge rules that the Las Vegas police improperly searched Roger's briefcase.
I would love to take that cops video as something not to do because it's a clear illegal search, and I knew we were in trouble.
The incriminating notes and the cassette cannot be used against Roger in court. They can be used against Bob, but even so, the prosecution knows they're in trouble.
So Lynn McClellan did a very shrewd thing. He went to Roger's attorney and said, I'll tell you what, if your guy testifies against Bob, we'll give your guy immunity.
Without that tape, we have nothing. And so Roger, quite frankly, walks free. But that, I needed Roger's testimony against Bob to make the case.
But Roger leaves the deal on the table and takes another way out.
And we got a phone call from the county jail. I think it was on a Saturday morning, February the 6th, 98, that Roger had just committed suicide in the county jail.
You think you're headed one place and then zoom, you know, the turn goes the other way. And then when Roger commits suicide, it just kind of let the air out of the balloon. I mean, you know, whoa, how do we get around this now? And where do we go from there?
Roger had sliced his wrists 55 times with a prison-issue razor.
Roger left a note, a dying, quote, dying declaration, saying that he did the killing and Bob did nothing, which we both knew. That's BS.
We just thought for sure that nothing could get more strange than this case.
Bob's lawyers argue that the note proves their client's innocence, but prosecutors say, not so fast.
This note he left was clearly information that was planted, information that was there that to lead us to certain directions, to do certain things.
According to crime writer Vanessa Leggett, Roger may have indeed been his brother's keeper.
Once Roger realized that they both couldn't get away with it, that one of them was going down, and Bob would be the person with the best chance to walk, Roger killed himself to save his brother.
An autopsy revealed that Roger was suffering from severe heart disease. Maybe he did know he was on the way out and gave his little brother a parting gift.
So many twists and turns and false trails. It was absolutely fascinating to watch this thing unfold.
Still, prosecutors are committed to going forward with the case against Bob. The state's last best hope is Roger's poorly recorded cassette tape. An audio expert compares the other voice on Roger's tape to a set of phrases spoken by Bob into a police microphone.
He says, well, I got some bad news. Okay, pretty well tells me the story. And he says about 80% that it's not.
At one time, this case had seemed like a slam dunk. Now it was a total long shot. But the prosecution wasn't going down without a fight.
In July of 1998, 15 months after his wife's murder, Bob Angleton walks into a crowded Houston courtroom to stand trial.
We try to keep the focus on Bob and not go off on voice recognition experts or this or that and all these different rabbit trails.
Prosecutors argue that the only person in the world with a motive for killing Doris was her husband.
If you believe what the defense wants you to believe, here we have Roger doing Bob the greatest favor known to man. I need to get out of this divorce without going to court, without going to the IRS, without going to the feds, and here, Roger, you just fall in my lap and kill my wife. Thank you. I may pay you a bunch of money now just because I could hug your neck.
Even though their own experts were 80% sure the voice on the tape was not Bob's, the prosecution risks it all and introduces the tape into evidence. They argue that the only person Roger could be talking to is Bob.
At one point, they were talking about whether or not to make it look like a robbery and to steal her wedding ring. And you hear the voice that I think is Bob on the tape saying, no, no cutting off of fingers.
How is it? No cutting fingers. You said don't put the dime. And when I had the finger to take it down. All right. I don't care. Well, I didn't know what your reason was right in there. I don't cut the finger. No, I wasn't gonna. It doesn't slide right off. Not gonna clip.
Well, that's something that someone who had some relationship with the person dying might say.
People have a way of speaking. You know, everybody has their own pace. They have different inflections they use. And everything that was on there was very characteristic of Bob.
On another part of the tape, the men discuss what to do with the family dog.
Let's go out and go back and close the door. That's what we decided not to. I thought you decided you're going to put it in a little cage. That way, if something blows like it did last time, then you're okay. Right? All right, I'll put it in the thing. I'll put it in the washroom. That's what you said. Just put it in the washroom. Can't open the door.
The defense contends that the tape is a conversation between Roger and a hitman he hired of his own volition. But it's a wild allegation that nobody seems to be buying.
Hitman doesn't have what to do with the dog. Hitman kills the dog. That's the end of the deal. The person who doesn't kill the dog is Bob. Because Bob likes the dog, kids like the dog.
But on the last day of the trial, the defense team fights back by putting the Angletons' 14-year-old twins on the stand.
We knew that the daughters would get up and say that that wasn't their father.
They've lost their mother. If they testify against their father, they lose their other parent. They were put in a really difficult situation.
Sure enough, both girls testify the voice on the tape is not their father.
They're entitled to their feelings, but I don't feel like they're looking at the evidence. I don't know for certain whether they sat down and listened to the entire tape, or if they just heard sound bites from it.
By now, people are feeling a lot of sympathy for Nicky and Allie, and there's all this reasonable doubt. Is it really Bob on the tape?
After 8 days of testimony, the jury begins deliberating. As they struggle to reach a verdict, they seem to be favoring the prosecution's case.
The first vote of the jury is 10-2, and McClellan has said, oh boy, that's good. We got 10, they got 2. Then they hear it's 11-1.
On the 4th day of deliberation, the jury returns with their verdict.
And then when they buzzed to say they had a verdict, and I said, I don't believe we did it. I don't believe we did it. And then find out we didn't.
The jury comes in, and lo and behold, Bob is found not guilty.
I was shocked. The whole family was shocked. We were so stunned we couldn't move.
I felt like I'd been kicked in the gut. It was just unbelievable to me. To this day, I still can't believe it.
We didn't serve Doris Angleton, and we didn't serve justice. I've lost cases before, but none I felt as strong about as this.
The public just simply can't believe it. It was clear that these two brothers were involved in this.
2 months after the trial, Bob agreed to settle up with the IRS for $1.7 million. But the FBI wasn't finished with him. They kept him in their sights, hoping he'd slip up and go back to bookmaking.
Gambling was Bob's livelihood. He has to keep his lifestyle up, and he has to have money coming in, and that's all that he knows that he can do.
The FBI launches a full-scale investigation into Bob's gambling activities. Turns out he couldn't keep his nose clean for long.
There was evidence that was brought to us is saying that the U.S. government may have a federal interest in some of Robert Angleton's past and present criminal activities.
We were getting a lot of grief for investigating this case again. But again, we were looking at it from a gambling perspective, from murder date forward. Was there still gambling activity going on?
Lest you wonder, there's no double jeopardy when a defendant, originally tried in state court, faces a new federal trial. Justice in the Doris Angleton case was finally getting a second chance.
We failed in our attempt, and we hoped the feds would be successful in theirs. We were excited, because they don't do that on every case by any stretch of imagination.
Federal prosecutors believe the key to Bob's acquittal was the poor quality and presentation of Roger's tape recording.
They played it on an audio cassette in a boombox in a courtroom. Nobody could understand what was being said.
This time, the FBI's own audio expert examines the tape.
We worked with the FBI lab very, very closely. They digitized the tape and made it of much better quality, based on the region of the country and the type of dialect used by the person on the tape, that it could have been Bob Angleton.
Agents also subpoena crime writer Vanessa Leggett.
She had talked to every witness in the case and had tape recordings of all these witnesses. And we thought it was incumbent upon us to not only find out what she knew, but if she knew anything in addition to what was used in the state case.
But Leggett refuses to cooperate.
I won't do that. And I couldn't. You know, these people had placed their trust in me. There were people whom I had interviewed that were genuinely afraid.
Vanessa claimed the privilege of the press, that she didn't have to reveal her sources, and did not turn the tapes over to us.
Leggett is found in contempt of court and sent to prison.
I really didn't see that I had a choice. So it wasn't a great deliberation process. I just had to gather the strength to do it.
Ironically, while Leggett sits inside a federal prison, Bob Angleton walks the streets of Houston, a free man.
The whole function of civil contempt is to hold you until you break. The key phrase that they say is, you have the keys to your own release. It makes it very difficult.
After 6 months, Leggett is released. Federal prosecutors decide they'll move ahead without her interviews. They arrest Angleton on federal charges of conspiracy, murder for hire, and a firearms violation.
The reason we were able to use that is because Bob brought Roger in from San Diego across state lines to commit the murder for him.
The trial was supposed to begin in Houston, but before it started, Bob Angleton jumped bail and turned his federal case into an international drama.
Six years after Doris Angleton was shot to death, her husband Bob is facing a federal murder trial.
On June the 12th, we had a scheduled hearing at 9 a.m. in one of the district court judge's courtroom, and we look in the courtroom and everybody's waiting for Bob Angleton to come into the courtroom.
The two prosecutors walk in, and you can tell by the looks on their face that there's a problem. And they just look at us and they say, Bob's gone. We were stunned, absolutely stunned.
Under the unwatchful eye of his defense team, Bob has vacated his home, skipped bail, and vanished.
We were truly afraid that Bob was going to make it all the way to Greece. And because Bob's family is Greek and may have Greek citizenship that might have extended down to Bob, that they might have never let him come back.
But within hours, Bob's life on the run is cut short. He's stopped with a fake passport at the Amsterdam International Airport.
What the customs official said was that he was just acting really nervous and saw the passport that might have not looked legitimate and then decided to do a full search.
The search uncovers $135,000 in cash and multiple IDs.
He had a driver's license that was in his true name. He had a driver's license from the Philippines that was in another alias name. He had another passport that was in another individual's name.
But there's a snag in bringing Bob back home. The Dutch government refuses the U.S. request to extradite Angleton.
And the only way that the United States Attorney's Office in Houston could get him back was to agree not to prosecute him on the murder for hire charge, but just the tax evasion and the money laundering and the false passport charges.
Bob's flight from justice ends in 2004, when the Dutch government finally agrees to a conditional extradition.
We had accepted it. Nobody was happy about it, because nobody wants to see anybody get away with murder.
3 months later, Angleton pleads guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit passport fraud and 2 counts of misuse of a passport. A later guilty plea on tax evasion charges puts his total sentence at 12 years, 3 months. Bob's release date is scheduled for 2014.
It doesn't satisfy the sense of justice I think Doris Angleton deserves.
I don't know if we'll ever get justice or not. Yeah, I don't want to see Bob again. I have nothing to say to him, and he has to live with what he did. He knows.
Because in a sense, he's in jail. He's doing time for different crimes. I guess overall, though, is that somebody needs to do time for the murder of Doris, who was a completely innocent victim, who did nothing other than want to get out of a marriage.
The agreement with the Netherlands allows the feds to refile murder for hire charges against Bob Angleton once he's released. Hopefully, he will finally pay in full for his crime in 2014. For True TV, I'm Dominick Dunne.